The Stonewall Riots of 1969 were a true catalyst for the fight for gay rights, as they brought light to the public eye the police brutality gay people were facing. Gay activists in San Francisco, specifically in the 1970s, played a crucial role in obtaining gay rights. Post-World War II, San Francisco became a large, alluring area for people in the LGBTQ community due to its liberal and generally tolerant society. At this time, California, quote, had penal codes that made homosexual sex acts a crime, yet the city boasted a number of well-known gay bars and clubs where homosexuals could assemble. San Francisco was a tolerable city, but that merely made it a larger target for homophobic harassment and violent threats. This is notable because, according to author Nicole Roberts, quote, while some mainstream newspapers reported that violence was occurring against San Francisco's gay community, none reported as often or as thoroughly as the gay community's own newspapers and magazines. The lack of in-depth reporting on the violence against the gay community only let the issue perpetuate as no one was held accountable. The new right and the religious right wanted to, quote, protect their idea of traditional family from corruption. They joined together to fight against the gay community. San Francisco was depicted as the mecca of the LGBTQ community, making it a viable target for conservatives. The right used San Francisco as an example of what is wrong with society to fuel the brigade against gay rights. According to Roberts, quote, the new right was able to separate gays and lesbians from other minority groups, portraying them as somehow morally suspect. Even in San Francisco, where the bare minimum of tolerance of queer people was expected, there was still an issue of harassment and violence. Psychologist Dr. Martin Stoll stated in an interview in 1976 that, quote, we are probably seeing a greater increase in acceptance. However, there's a difference between toleration and acceptance. Gays are tolerated and will be for a long time. They are not accepted. The lack of acceptance allows for anti-gay violence to continue, even in seemingly more tolerant areas like San Francisco. Politicians who sought out support from the gay community were found berating gay people in the press. The LGBTQ community attempted to fight against this harassment by trying to educate heterosexuals. Media can be highly influential to people's perceptions of others, hence the push for more positive depictions of gay people on television to counter the critiques they were facing. Had this tactic been successful, it could have been an effective way to slowly shift the public's opinion of gay people to be more positive. Dr. Martin Stowe, a counselor, stated in an interview in 1976 with ABC7 that, quote, when people think of homosexuals, they think of sex. Really, homosexuality means same sex, and sex is really of tertiary importance. Of much greater importance to the homosexual is an affiliation, that is being with someone of the same sex, and affection, the idea of the mutual expression of love between two people. This kind of exposure from ABC7 was significant and a big achievement for the gay community. This quote helps disprove a common misconception of queerness that it is all about sex. This type of positive exposure was what the community was hoping would turn the public view of gay people into a more positive one. However, these efforts were somewhat in vain because as gay people became more visible in the media, the right merely ignited more attacks against them. These attacks became so violent and frequent that the gay community had to, quote, create its own vigilante groups to combat anti-gay harassment. Harassment was not the only issue facing the gay community at the time. Reports starting in the 1970s showed excessive force by police during bar raids. For example, an article from The Advocate from 1971 noted that a car leaving a gay club was, quote, rammed by a patrol car, knocking it back into the alley, and other police opened fire. The driver was shot in the knee and elbow as he exited the vehicle. A member of the Society for Individual Rights named Frank Bartley was shot in the head while being arrested for, quote, seeking to make homosexual conduct. More articles of the time reported other incidents of excessive force, such as when police officers dressed in plain clothing to, quote, rough up gays when making arrests. Another such incident occurred in 1974 when two police officers in San Francisco, quote, beat him after a minor traffic incident. Police brutality was not the only harassment gay people faced in San Francisco. According to a 1972 article about harassment data, quote, An average of 83 gay people per weekend have been arrested under California State Penal Code 647C, obstructing the sidewalks, in the Tenderloin area alone during January, February, and March. Police were explicitly targeting and harassing gay people in this neighborhood for crimes heterosexual couples were rarely charged with. The police were not the only group harassing the gay community. Places like the Castro district began to displace their hate towards the gay community because of the demographic shift that was taking place in their neighborhood. Castro district was historically a Hispanic neighborhood. However, they began to feel like their community was taken over by, quote, white people of a different sexual orientation. They focused their frustration on their community being infiltrated and their people being displaced onto gay people. The people of the Castro district started to harass the gay youth living there. This led to retaliation by the Lavender Panthers, a gay vigilante group. Despite the anti-gay violence and harassment, the gay community managed to make strides in the fight for gay rights during the 1970s. Gay people created their communities and safe spaces in San Francisco to be visible. Dr. Stoll stated that, quote, gays are tolerated in San Francisco. That very likely explains why more and more homosexuals are going public, or, as they prefer to put it, coming out of the closet. But it's not a decision to be made lightly. Visibility was a noteworthy achievement for the gay community, but evidently still came with the risk of retaliation from conservatives, even in progressive areas like San Francisco. San Francisco even hosted its first Pride Parade in 1972, a tradition that occurs annually. Gay activists in San Francisco were successful in repealing some anti-gay legislation. Nicole Roberts writes that, quote, the gay community helped to promote the repeal of a century-old California law against homosexual acts, adultery, and some heterosexual with regard to sex acts occurring between two consenting adults in the 1970s. Additionally, qualified homosexuals would be allowed to join the police department. Another major win for the gay community was when, quote, the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco prohibited employment discrimination against homosexuals by firms under contract to do business with the city, and by 1978 even voted in favor of banning discrimination against homosexuals in employment, housing, and public accommodations. One of the most considerable achievements of this decade in San Francisco was when Harvey Milk, the first openly gay man, was elected as a public official in 1977. Milk was a key activist in San Francisco in the 1970s. He had a unique platform as he was fundamentally against violence as a strategy for change, despite the continual violence his community was facing. Milk had high aspirations for his time in office after being elected. According to a U.S. Embassy article, quote, Milk sought not only to change the stereotypes that existed about gays, but also to promote a legal framework that supports gays, including the passage of a gay rights bill and speaking out against a barrage of legislation which would restrict gays' civil and political liberties. According to interviews with his supporters, Milk was known for his, quote, charisma and civic mobilization skills, even being noted to have electricity in him, because he could unite and inspire others into action. He became a beacon of hope for queer youth, which served as motivation to continue fighting for equality. Milk helped defeat Proposition 6 in 1978, the anti-gay legislation that would prohibit gay people from teaching in schools. He thought that closeted gays coming out was the only way to prevent the initiative from passing. He convinced gay people nationwide to come out, stating, quote, if a bullet should ever enter my brain, let that bullet destroy every closet door. Tragically, he was assassinated 11 months after being elected into office. Harvey Milk and many other gay activists created the foundation for the fight for gay rights that is ongoing today. Gay people today are still fighting the same fights as the people of San Francisco in the 1970s, as anti-gay violence is still prevalent today. As Dr. Martin Stoll stated, gay people are tolerated but not accepted. This remains true today as rampant homophobia and transphobia are still prevailing issues across the country. However, more people than ever are openly gay and proud. We as a community are still fighting to gain acceptance. The efforts of the people of the past serve as inspiration and motivation for the community. The bravery and perseverance of gay people of the past allow us to continue our fight for acceptance today.